Namaskar, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the sixth day of this week long celebration of Earth Science Week 2023, which is truly a groundbreaking event as it is jointly organized by four prominent institutions: Maharashtra Vriksha Samvardhini Pune, the Applied Geology Program at the School of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Science, Goa University, Panji, the Department of Geology at St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, and the Department of Geology at the Government Institute of Science, Aurangabad. All the sessions can also be viewed on Mission Devrai YouTube channel. Today, through the medium of philetic artistry, we'll unveil the stories of our old friend dinosaurs, definitely. Now I request Dr. Mohan Sonar to introduce our speaker, Mr. Vikram Vakil. Over to you, Mohan sir. Thank you.
Very good evening. Thank you, all of you. As we all know about dinosaurs, they are very fascinating animals. And everyone, like kids, then adults, they know the dinosaurs. In 1993, the one movie has came, that is Jurassic Park, which was directed by Mr. Steven Spielberg. So this movie has gained popularity in the world. In this movie, for the first time, people came to know how dinosaurs can walk, how they sound, and how much big they were. So today's talk is based on this topic, that is dinosaurs. So dinophilately is a collective approach to make aware with these amazing and breathtaking creatures to us, audience, through an artificial system of dinosaur classification based on the available stamps. At the same time, we will learn about the first stamps released on dinosaurs and how dinosaur classification can be made fun and exciting through the philately. So today's speaker is Dr. Vikram Vakil. He will talk on this topic. This beautiful lecture he will deliver. So who has obtained his doctorate degree in vertebrate paleontology at the School of Environment in the University of Queensland, Brisbane, Australia. His area of specialization is in dinosaur bone geochemistry, vertebral morphometrics of Plesiosaurus, and Ichthyosaurus, and taxonomy and conservation. So implications of late quaternary small mammal fossils of Australia he has also studied. He has published peer-reviewed papers in peer-reviewed and high impact factor journals such as Alcheringa, which is known as the Australian Journal of Paleontology, and Paleontologica Electronica. He has also written many articles in the newspapers of New Zealand, like the Otago Times. He has also discovered and described new species of extinct mouse, Notomys magnus, from Australia. Apart from paleontology, geology, and geomicrobiology and evolutionary biology, he is also interested in astrophysics and quantum mechanics. And on these topics, he has delivered multiple lectures. So further, he has given presentations in many national and international conferences on this topic. So I call him to deliver his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that introduction. And actually, I am still doing my PhD, so I have not yet exactly obtained my doctorate. But yeah, I'm still doing my PhD, and hopefully I should be completing it next year. So I'll just share my screen now. And yes, so as sir already mentioned, we're going to be looking at dinophilately today. And dinosaurs, again, as sir mentioned, we are all basically aware of dinosaurs, right from kids to adults. Everybody loves dinosaurs. Everybody's fascinated by them. And media, pop culture, and dinosaurs in fiction, such as the movies like Jurassic Park, etc., have popularized dinosaurs more than ever before. So whenever we talk about dinosaurs or any animal that actually fits within the grand evolutionary scheme, we normally tend to talk about it in a very particular format. We talk about what that animal is, meaning what characterizes that animal, where does that animal fit in the evolutionary history of life, what are the origins, what are the descendants, what are its relationships with other organisms, and so on and so forth. It's more or less like a methodological approach that people follow whenever they are talking of any particular taxonomic group or any particular group of organisms in the evolutionary or the phylogenetic tree of life. But today we're not going to do that. We're not going to take the so-called classical approach. We're going to try and make it a little bit of fun. We're going to be a little bit chilled and a little bit relaxed when it comes to the whole classification thing. And that's why we're going to be looking at stamps of dinosaurs specifically. And we're going to see how these stamps can help us in talking about dinosaurs, like all that stuff that we already know about dinosaurs, like the evolution, the history, the classification, etc. How can stamps help us in introducing these concepts in a more interactive and in a more fun manner? So my name is Vikram. I'm a PhD student at the University of Queensland. And so, yes, I'll begin my presentation now. So what you're seeing first on the screen, and I think Vartak sir may have already mentioned this in his talk day before yesterday. This is actually the stamp that was issued by Australia's Age of Dinosaurs. And the paleo artist James Gurney was commissioned to issue this. He was commissioned to illustrate this particular stamp. James Gurney is known for his work on fiction, especially his famous Dinotopia book series. And this stamp was basically released to pay a tribute to all Australian paleontologists and Australian dinosaur discoveries in particular. As you can see on the screen, from the left to the right, we have this amphibian-like creature in the water, which is Koolasuchus. Now, Koolasuchus in some of the older stamps was depicted as a very sluggish, thick-bodied animal because we did not have enough fossil material at that time. But as you can see here, its body proportions are more like somewhat of a salamander. That is because we know today that Koolasuchus belongs to a group of extinct amphibians called the temnospondyls, which outwardly resembled salamanders to a certain degree. Then we've also got certain ceratopsian dinosaurs, such as Serendipa ceratops. Now, these are what you say the basal members, the ancestral group to your more advanced ceratopsians like Triceratops. Then you've got T-Mimus on the screen. T-Mimus is a coelurosaur, meaning it belongs to the broad group of dinosaurs to which your T-Rex belongs, to which some of the smallest dinosaurs called Compsognathids belong, and to which modern birds also belong, because scientifically speaking, birds are nothing but avian dinosaurs or flying dinosaurs, avian theropods. And then we've got this long-necked sauropod on the top. It's Diamantinosaurus. Diamantinosaurus is actually a native dinosaur from Queensland, which is where I am living and working and studying at the moment. So Diamantinosaurus was one of those long-necked dinosaurs which belongs to a very specific group of sauropods called the titanosaurs. These were all massive creatures. And the very famous dinosaur Brachiosaurus, according to current consensus, Brachiosaurus is also a member of the titanosaurs. So this dinosaur Diamantinosaurus was very closely related to Brachiosaurus. Then we've got Quantasaurus, those two dinosaurs that you can see with the bluish kind of neck. So Quantasaurus has got a little bit of funny history because Quantasaurus was actually named after the Qantas Airlines company. This is because Qantas Airlines was actually responsible for transporting the bones of these animals from the fossil locality to the city where they were analyzed in universities and laboratories, etc. And therefore, in order to kind of show their gratitude, the paleontologists came up with the name Quantasaurus. And finally, you've got Australovenator on the far right-hand side. This is one of those exclusively Australian group of dinosaurs, which is called the Megaraptors or the Megaraptoridae. Their phylogenetic position is still debated, but on the whole, they belong to a group called the Carcharodontosaurs. So just this one particular stamp can tell you so much about the different kinds of animals that were present in a particular ecosystem, in a particular locality at any given time. And as Vartak sir mentioned yesterday, that along with the stamps, along with our increase in the knowledge of the science, the paleo artist, the illustrator, also has to keep himself or herself updated so that the illustrations on the newer versions of the stamps also keep on changing. So I don't need to go into the history of what is philately or anything of that sort. We have seen some wonderful lectures during this week, and every one of those lectures has thoroughly covered what philately is, the history of philately, etc. But just like that's why I've just devoted one particular slide before we move on to dinosaurs. So what is philately? Philately is nothing but basically the collection and study of postage stamps. The very first postage stamp was actually issued by Britain on May 6, 1840. It was called the penny black stamp. As you can see on the screen. And the penny black stamp actually has the profile of Queen Victoria's face, Queen Victoria's head and the neck, the bust region. And for almost 60 successive years, her face was used on basically all British stamps. And the perforated stamps, the stamps that have those holes that we are so used to seeing, they did not come about until 1857. So prior to 1857, as you can see with the penny black, they are non-perforated stamps. And after 1857, all stamps were perforated. So moving on straight to our topic about dinosaur philately, just a very brief introduction to what dinosaurs are. Nobody really needs a proper introduction. We all know what dinosaurs are, but just, to recapitulate stuff. Dinosaurs basically are those groups of animals that have got extinct as well as extant or living relatives. The extinct ones are called non-avian dinosaurs or non-flying dinosaurs. The ones that are alive today are the birds, as you can see on the screen. The non-avian dinosaurs belonged or lived during what is referred to as the Mesozoic era. Mesozoic era is further divided into three periods: Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Dinosaurs, the proper or the true dinosaurs that we call Dinosauria, did not come about until late Triassic, meaning they must have had some sort of a middle Triassic ancestor, but the proper emergence of dinosaurs was not until late Triassic. And even then, they were relatively small in size. They were not the dominant animals in the ecosystem at that particular time, because you had other reptiles like the crocodilian ancestors and other archosaurs, which were very much dominant at that time. So dinosaurs pretty much became dominant at the end of Triassic or the beginning of Jurassic, when they could explore the different ecological niches. And as I mentioned earlier, dinosaurs have been popularized in media, in fiction, in stories and movies, etc. Jurassic Park being one of the prime examples. Jurassic Park was literally one of those movies that was responsible for the catapulting of dinosaurs from animals that were just like commonly known amongst people to being a household name. After the release of Jurassic Park in 1993, names such as T-Rex, names such as Triceratops, Stegosaurus literally became household names. Every kid, every adult is aware of what these dinosaurs are or who they are. So as far as dinosaur stamps goes, as I was saying, we can use dinosaur stamps as a great learning tool for all ages, be it kids who are interested in just seeing some pictures of dinosaurs, or be it sub-adults to adults who have no idea of what goes on in dinosaur paleontology, but are still interested in knowing about dinosaurs. We can use these stamps to introduce the concept of dinosaurs to everybody. Now, dinosaur stamp collecting, there's a difference between the stamp issuing and stamp collecting over here. So dinosaur stamps have been issued for a very long time, but dinosaur stamp collecting is somewhat of a hobby that has become more popularized in the last 25 to 30 years. It's not that before this time stamps were not issued, it's just that a few countries issued them, but in the past 25 to 30 years, we've not only seen an increase in the number of dinosaur stamps that are issued, we've also seen an increase in the number of countries that issue them. And as a result, because of the popularization of dinosaurs in movies such as Jurassic Park, the hobby of stamp collecting has also increased. So it's like there's a parallel between the popularization of dinosaurs in media and stamp collecting. And the very first dinosaur to be issued on stamp was Lufengosaurus. It was issued in 1958 by People's Republic of China. Now, Lufengosaurus, the black and white stamp that you were seeing, that was the first stamp that was issued. And Lufengosaurus, as we know today, is one of the basal members of your long-necked dinosaurs. So dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus and Titanosaurus, etc. They belong to a group called the sauropods or Sauropodomorpha. Lufengosaurus is a very, very basal sauropodomorph. Some people might even call it a prosauropod, but that is not really a scientifically valid term today. And then in 2014, Hong Kong reissued the Lufengosaurus stamp. And now you can see the difference between the two. You can see that in the black and white stamp, the tail of Lufengosaurus is literally being dragged on the ground. Whereas in the 2014 version, you can see that the tail is held aloft. It is above the ground. That is because from 1958 until 2014, our knowledge, our scientific understanding of the biomechanics and the posture and the locomotory dynamics of Lufengosaurus has increased. As a result, of course, like I said, paleo artists need to keep themselves updated with what's going on in the scientific world. And as a result, when in 2014 it was reissued, they updated the overall posture of Lufengosaurus. So then we come to Owen's Dinosauria. The person whose photo you are seeing on the screen, again, most of you are well versed with who this is. This is Sir Richard Owen. In 1842, he coined the term Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizards. Although some of his ideas and some of his descriptions and taxonomy are considered outdated by today's standards, we still, of course, recognize him and acknowledge the fact that he was the first person to recognize dinosaurs as a completely distinct and different group of reptiles. Even though he was an opponent of evolution, he was not one of the supporters of Darwin's theory of natural selection. He was one of the opponents, and he had his own personal reasons. He had his own religious views, etc. Everything considered, he was an opponent, but still he was one of the first people who realized that, hold on a second, dinosaurs, these groups of animals that I'm seeing, these bones that I'm having, they are not like any other reptiles that are alive today. They do form a natural group on their own, meaning what a natural group actually means is that all the descendants have a common ancestor. So a common ancestor and all the descendants together form what we call a monophyletic group or a natural group. So he was the first person to realize that, and accordingly, he gave the term Dinosauria in 1842. And in order to pay tribute to Sir Richard Owen, the Royal Mail issued this first day cover of Owen's Dinosauria. And as you can see, it has actually got an imprint of his original signature as well. And 5 dinosaur stamps were issued in honor of Sir Richard Owen. Starting from the left, you have Iguanodon, which is one of the ornithopod dinosaurs. Then you have the all-time famous Stegosaurus, one of those armored dinosaurs. You also have the famous T-Rex. You also have 2 dinosaurs which belong to the ceratopsians or the frilled and horned dinosaurs like Protoceratops and Triceratops. And this was issued by Southampton on 20th August, 1991. This is actually the first day cover and first day issue stamps. So we can use stamps like these. We can use these first day covers and stamps like these to talk about the history of dinosaur, to talk about the history of dinosaur discoveries. And we shall see in the next couple of slides that we can talk a little bit more about dinosaur discoveries and all the drama that took place while dinosaurs were being discovered through stamps. So then we have something called the bone wars. This is also a kind of like a historical aspect of dinosaur discoveries and something that can be studied and shown through stamps. So on the screen, you can see the profiles of 2 gentlemen. On the top, you have Sir Edward Drinker Cope, and on the bottom, you have Sir Othniel Charles Marsh. Now, these are 2 very famous and prolific dinosaur bone collectors. So from 1877 to 1892, you had what is, in hindsight, people refer to as the dinosaur bone wars. This is because both these gentlemen were in a race to outcompete each other. Each wanted to prove himself to be better than the other one. Each one wanted to say that, hey, wait, I can find more bones and better bones of dinosaurs than you. So they were wanting to outcompete each other. And this was not always the case. Initially, both of them were academic pals, you can say academic friends. They were on sound terms. But during one of the exhibitions, Othniel Charles Marsh pointed out to Edward Drinker Cope that, hey, the skeleton of Elasmosaurus that you have on display, Elasmosaurus is, by the way, an extinct marine reptile. It's a plesiosaurian reptile. It is not a dinosaur, but lived at the same time. So Othniel Charles Marsh told Edward Drinker Cope that, hey, the skeleton that you have, the head has been placed in the wrong position. Instead of placing the head on the neck region, you have by mistake placed it on the tail region. Edward Drinker Cope did not take this criticism very in a good-hearted way, in good spirits. He kind of had this grudge against Othniel Charles Marsh, that Othniel Marsh wanted to purposely insult him in front of everybody. And ever since then, they had this so-called bitterness or rivalry amongst them. Now, the Bone Wars is something through which we can have certain positive insights and certain negative insights. The positive part of the Bone Wars was that as a result of this race, as a result of them wanting to outcompete each other, we got some beautiful fossils of some of the most famous dinosaurs, like you can see on the screen: Triceratops, Allosaurus, Diplodocus, even others like Marasaurus, for instance. All these dinosaurs are known because these gentlemen helped in the excavation of those bones, or at least they paid money to the people who went out and collected the bones. But the lesson to be learned over here is that when you have personal issues or personal grudge and bitterness interfering in your science, then the only thing that actually suffers is the science. Because as a result, both of these people, they used to publish like crazy. They used to publish multiple papers in a month, like almost like a few dozen papers in a year. And it's only because they wanted to just prove themselves to be better than the other. And as a result, a lot of errors crept in their papers. When all their papers were reevaluated later on, people realized that, hey, most of these papers are not even scientifically valid and they were just discarded. So that's a lesson to be learned, that when you have any sort of personal enmity or bitterness towards a person, just keep it to yourself. Don't let it come out in science. So that is a lesson that we can learn from these Bone Wars, and it's a lesson for posterity, for every one of us. Then we can also learn from stamps about the real life Indiana Jones. Now, Indiana Jones, again, is a very popular media character. It was played in the movie franchise by the actor Harrison Ford. Just recently, the 5th part of the movie has come out. And Indiana Jones in the movies is portrayed as an archaeologist who likes to go on adventures. But the character of Indiana Jones was loosely based off on a real life paleontologist called Roy Chapman Andrews. Now, I say loosely based off because the director of Indiana Jones, Steven Spielberg, has clarified on multiple occasions that his Indiana Jones was not exactly based off on Roy Chapman Andrews. It was just loosely based off on a person who would like to go out on adventures and do some fun stuff like digging. Now, during that time, during the 20th century, the only people, or the majority of the people who would go out and conduct these expeditions and be all adventurous were paleontologists and geologists, for that matter. Archaeology did not actually mature as a hardcore branch of science until much later. So therefore, Indiana Jones was loosely based off on Roy Chapman Andrews. So Roy Chapman Andrews was an American explorer and naturalist. He was very famous for conducting a lot of expeditions, especially the Central Asiatic expeditions in the 20th century. Now, the main aim for this particular expedition was that Roy Chapman Andrews wanted to find some sort of evidence for human origin, some sort of mammalian ancestors and human origins as well. But what he ended up finding was a bunch of dinosaur eggs. Now, during that time, when people found these eggs, they were not sure to whom the eggs belonged. But then they had also found a small ceratopsian dinosaur called Protoceratops, as you can see on the screen. Protoceratops was found in that locality. A lot of skeletons of Protoceratops were found. So people naturally assumed that these eggs belonged to Protoceratops. Then they also had one particular fossil of Oviraptor, the other dinosaur that you can see on the screen. Oviraptor actually belongs to the group of theropod dinosaurs, or that group which mainly includes the meat-eating dinosaurs. So naturally, the assumption was that, hey, these eggs belong to Protoceratops, which was trying to protect its eggs, and the Oviraptor was really trying to steal it. And that's how basically... sorry? Did someone say something?
डबल खाल्लंय हे टाकून दे सांबार चटणी पण खराब झाली आहे
I'm sorry. Did someone say something?
विचारायला लागली
Vikram, you continue.
No worries, sir.
Okay.
I have muted them. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. All right. So the assumption made at that time was that this was Protoceratops trying to protect its eggs, and Oviraptor was trying to steal the eggs, which is why it's called Oviraptor, means egg thief. But then afterwards, years later, when we were actually able to scan these eggs, when we were actually able to see through CT scans inside these eggs, we saw fossilized embryos, fossilized babies. And those fossilized babies did not turn out to be of Protoceratops. They were fossilized babies of Oviraptor, meaning that it was actually Oviraptor who was just trying to protect its eggs. He was just guarding its eggs. So the name egg thief actually does not make sense. But the rules of International Council of Zoological Nomenclature allow that once you have named an organism, it stays, unless, of course, you find that that name has been used for something else, or that particular name is no longer valid because it belongs to an animal which has already been previously described. If these cases are not met, then you have to retain that name. So Oviraptor, till today, we use the name, but it was not really an egg thief. So through these stamps, we can also come to know a little bit of drama and a little bit of updating of science that has taken place over the years in these different cases. So we can also, through these stamps, explain the whole concept of evolution. In just a few stamps, we can actually do that. So here we have the stamp of Charles Darwin, who, of course, in 1859 came out with his On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, a landmark in the history of science, especially in the history of biology. And everything that we do in biology, in science today, is a total tribute to evolution. As many evolutionary biologists have remarked over the years, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Evolution is literally the backbone of biology today. Everything from medical science to zoology, taxonomy, everything combined. So at Darwin's time, when he proposed his evolutionary theory, we all know that it was not easily accepted by people, especially the religious people. They faced a lot. Darwin had to face a lot of opposition because Darwin's theory removed the need for some sort of a creator who would have independently created these organisms, because Darwin proposed that no, organisms are not independently created. All of them have a shared common ancestry. So that immediately kind of put God in the backseat, and people didn't like it. So of course, Darwin faced a lot of opposition. And one of the key aspects wherein he faced opposition, and this is where Sir Richard Owen also comes in a little bit. One of the key aspects wherein he faced opposition was people were telling him, hey, you know what? Your theory is not really right because you don't have any missing links or transitional fossils. If you are saying that two animals are related to each other and that somewhere back in time, they had a common ancestor, what happened to all those intermediate forms that connect these two animals? You don't have them. So here comes Thomas Henry Huxley. As you can see on the middle part, we have a postcard issued by Germany. And this is the only thing that we have for Thomas Henry Huxley. We don't really have a proper stamp for Thomas Henry Huxley. So this is where Thomas Henry Huxley comes in. He called himself the bulldog of Charles Darwin. And he said that, oh, you know what? I'll try my best to find a missing link so as to prove the evolutionary theory. And he did. He came up with what we refer to as the missing link between dinosaurs or reptiles and birds, the Archaeopteryx or the ancient bird. As you can see, the stamps of Archaeopteryx have been issued by multiple countries over the years, but these are two very famous Archaeopteryx stamps, the most famous amongst all. So one is issued by Sierra Leone, the other is by Guyana. And yes, Archaeopteryx, the discovery of Archaeopteryx kind of vindicated or validated Darwin's theory of natural selection. So this is also a concept that the stamps can help us in knowing about. And we can also talk to a certain extent dinosaur origins through stamps. So this is actually a stamp, again, issued by Guyana. It is of Lagosuchus. Lagosuchus is not technically speaking a dinosaur. It belongs to a much higher group called the Dinosauromorpha. Now, Dinosauromorpha, you might think, hey, it's still a dinosaur. Well, yes and no. Dinosauromorpha includes what we call certain basal forms, such as Lagosuchus, and it includes the other group called the true dinosaurs or Dinosauria, which includes all the dinosaurs that we know of, including birds. So the stamps of Lagosuchus have been issued, so they can be used to illustrate dinosaur origins as well. And even though this stamp is not exactly scientifically accurate, because today we know that Lagosuchus was not really this bulky as it is shown. Even though in the image you might feel it is slender, the stomach, the belly region is shown to be a little bit bulkier than what it really was. But still, it's a pretty good indicator of what Lagosuchus would have looked like. And the length that has been mentioned on the screen, on the stamp, that is 14 inches, that is pretty much accurate, because Lagosuchus fossils were known relatively complete right from the start itself. So we had the tip of the tail right up until the tip of the snout preserved. So we were able to estimate the overall length, and it was 14 inches. So this is, I would say, an 80% scientifically accurate stamp. Even I would say 85 to 90% actually. And as you can see on the stamp, it is shown trying to chase some sort of an insect or a dragonfly. That is because the diet of Lagosuchus has been inferred to be consisting of small insects and worms and crustaceans and that small animals, basically. Now, the basic dinosaur classification, as we all know, is based on the hip structure. So you have the bird-line dinosaur and the lizard-hip dinosaurs. And this kind of classification is a very textbook, type of classification, but it is something that we can express or illustrate through stamps, because all the major divisions of dinosaurs, stamps have been issued for each and every of these major divisions. So, by the way, the first thing is that birds have evolved from the lizard-hipped dinosaurs and not the bird-hipped dinosaurs. The birds are saurischians, not ornithischians. How do we know this? Because the main difference between the Saurischia and Ornithischia is on the basis of the hip structure. The pubis in Saurischia points forward, the ischium points backward. In the case of the bird-hipped dinosaurs, both pubis and ischium point backward or lie parallel to each other. In the case of birds, when we see a bird, we see that it has got an ornithischian-like pelvis. But if you are to track its developmental state, you will see that when the bird is developing as an embryo, the pubis is actually pointing forward, but then afterwards it grows back. So that's how we know that birds have been descended from Saurischian dinosaurs and that they are Saurischians themselves. So in Saurischia, the stamps can be used to illustrate the different groups, the long-necked sauropodomorphs. You've got the T-Rex. And by the way, this stamp of T-Rex, we will come to later on again. You've also got the sparrows. This is actually a stamp issued by India. It's our famous common sparrow. And that's because birds are dinosaurs. And in the ornithischians, you have all the major groups represented by stamps as well. For instance, you've got stamps of Ankylosaurs, you've got stamps of Pachycephalosaurus, which was issued by Korea. You've also got a stamp of Triceratops issued by Tanzania. You've got one by Stegosaurus issued by USA. And finally, you've got the Hadrosaurus, or the ornithopods, or the duck-billed dinosaurs, this one issued by Angola. So stamps can be very fun and illustrative to talk about something as classical as classification as well. And of course, now we can come to T-Rex on stamps. T-Rex needs absolutely no introduction. It is one of the most famous dinosaurs, and everybody is aware of what and who T-Rex is. But one thing is that you will notice, why is T-Rex so popular? There are lots of factors responsible for it. Firstly, it's the sheer size of the meat-eating dinosaur. Something as massive, something as ferocious as T-Rex, we don't see around us today. That is one of the reasons. Secondly, the popularization of T-Rex by movies such as Jurassic Park created this interest in people, that more people wanted to study T-Rex fossils as compared to other dinosaurs. As a result, we know much more about T-Rex than we know about any other dinosaur, although that thing is changing slowly and gradually, because now we are understanding more and more about other groups as well. But still, the amount of knowledge that we have about T-Rex far outcompetes the knowledge on any other group of dinosaur. And there are many questions that we can kind of talk about with regards to the stamps. So on the first So those 4 stamps that you are seeing, the very first stamp, you will see a baby T-Rex trying to catch some sort of an insect. Now you can see that the baby T-Rex over there, these are, by the way, these 4 stamps were issued by USA. And you can see in this particular stamp that the baby T-Rex is feathered. Now, this is not just speculation. The paleo artist responsible for doing this illustration has taken into consideration the latest scientific evidence. We have found fossilized embryos of Tyrannosaurus which were feathered. And that's how we know that at least the juveniles were feathered. Whether or not these feathers were retained in adulthood is something we are still not 100% sure of, but in all likelihood, they may have been retained. That is number one. Secondly, was T-Rex a bone crusher? How do we answer that? Did it just eat the flesh and throw away the bones, or did it actually chomp on the bones like some animals do today? You know, because of their strong bite force, they're actually able to go through the bone. Do we know that? How do we know that? Okay, so you can see this particular stamp, which is separate on the top right part. It's this kind of grayish, yellowish color. And then you can see at the bottom, coprolites is written on it. And that's because through the study of coprolites, which is fossil feces or fossil dung of T-Rex, we have actually found bony elements preserved inside the coprolites. And that's how we know that T-Rex was not just a predator, it was actually a bone crusher. And the T-Rex stamps have been issued by many, many, many countries. And also the main question about whether it was a fierce predator or a lazy scavenger. The latest studies tell us that, well, the bite force of T-Rex was really very powerful. It was too powerful for a scavenger. If you are wanting to just feed on dead carcasses and stuff, you don't need that much power in your bite force. You don't need that sort of musculature attached to your body if you are just a scavenger. But if you are an active predator, then that makes sense. But at the same time, nobody is going to refuse a free meal. Like, even if you are an active predator, even if you are something like a lion who actively predates on animals, if you find a dead carcass rotting around, you're not going to just walk away. You are going to eat it. Like, it saves time, it saves effort. So probably the same strategy was employed by T-Rex as well. That is, it was probably a mix of an active predator and a scavenger at times. And that is also something that can be illustrated through stamps. Out of those 4 stamps, the 4th one that you are seeing at the bottom right-hand side, you can see T-Rex trying to chase one of these small mammal-like reptiles that was alive at that time. And that shows that it was an active predator. So again, here the paleo artist has been very careful in drawing the parallel between the latest science and the illustrations. And some of the biggest dinosaurs can also be illustrated through stamps. We know that sauropods, or the long-necked dinosaurs, are some of the biggest dinosaurs. The biggest dinosaur that we know of today is called Patagotitan majorum from Patagonia in South America. The thing is, it is a relatively recently described dinosaur. Not very recently, it's been a few years out now, but still we don't have any latest stamp which has been issued pertaining to Patagotitan. But what we do have is the stamp of Argentinosaurus. Argentinosaurus is literally next to Patagotitan in being one of the biggest dinosaurs of all times, 30+ meters long. Up until the time we knew about Patagotitan, Argentinosaurus and dinosaurs such as Ultrasaurus, they were considered to be the largest dinosaurs ever. So we do have stamps of Argentinosaurus, as you can see on the screen, the one issued by Burkina Faso. And yes, and of course, we have other sauropods, other long-necked dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, etc., which have been issued from time to time by different countries and are being continued to do so. And we do have some of the smallest dinosaurs on stamps as well. So for instance, here is a very good example of the updating that has taken place in our knowledge. So one of the smallest dinosaurs that we know of is called Compsognathus. Anyone who's seen the Jurassic Park franchise would be aware of those small, tiny dinosaurs which were being very naughty, which were being very much troublesome to all the people they would encounter. So these are some of the very small dinosaurs. They are actually very much related to your Tyrannosaurids, actually, in terms of the evolutionary history. So the Tyrannosauroids as a superfamily and Compsognathidae as a family together fall under a higher family called the Coelurosauria. Coelurosauria includes dinosaurs such as T-Rex, the biggest meat eaters kind of thing, one of the biggest meat eaters, It also includes the smallest dinosaurs like Compsognathus, and Coelurosauria also includes birds. So here you can see on the screen that initially when Sierra Leone issued the stamp of Compsognathus, Compsognathus was shown to be relatively bulky. It was shown to be relatively bulky, and also the pose, the overall posture is very weird over here. The angle at which the neck is twisted of that Compsognathus, that's not a very valid posture. It would have literally broken off its neck if it were to actually twist in that direction. But then you see Jordan in 2012 has issued an updated stamp of Compsognathus. So over here, those two green dinosaurs that you were seeing at the side, that's Compsognathus. And you can clearly see our shift in the understanding of how Compsognathus looked and how it walked and what was its overall posture. As you can see, the tail is no longer held slightly above the ground. It is held perfectly well above the ground, because now we do have complete skeletons of the hind limbs of Compsognathus as well. So that's again to show how our knowledge of dinosaurs has been updated, not only in terms of science, but also it has been reflected in terms of illustrations on stamps. So stamps can be useful in talking about how our knowledge of dinosaurs has changed over time. Then we can also use stamps to kind of talk about a very artificial or unnatural way of classifying dinosaurs. Instead of using the traditional classification scheme, which taxonomy and all research papers and most books on dinosaurs normally use, we can use stamps to make it a little bit more fun. We can, for instance, group these dinosaurs called ornamented dinosaurs, or dinosaurs with some sort of fancy headgears and crests, and we can use stamps to illustrate them, because all the major groups of these ornamented dinosaurs, again, for each of them, stamps have been issued. You've got, for instance, dinosaurs with crests like Parasaurolophus. You've got some weird ornamented dinosaurs like Corythosaurus. You've got the plated dinosaurs like Stegosaurus. You've also got the armored dinosaurs, which had armors right on their body, right up until the tail, these small bony pelts of dermal armors, the ankylosaurs. So the ankylosaur that you were seeing on the screen is actually Minmi paravertebra. It's a native Australian dinosaur. And so we can also, once we have displayed all these different dinosaurs, these different ornamented dinosaurs through stamps, we can ask, like, what was the purpose of this ornamentation? Well, we're not 100% sure, but in all likelihood, we know that it was some sort of display structure, possibly for visual cues. In some cases, some of the ornamentations may have helped in defense as well. Like, for example, when you look at Stegosaurus, the spikes on the tail were probably used for defense. As far as the plates of the Stegosaurus go, well, people have postulated various theories over the years. They were probably used for display. They were probably used to give out excess heat or thermoregulation, because when you take the cross section of the plate, you can actually see blood vessels traversing through each of them. So all this thing about dinosaurs, all these, the purpose of the different ornamentations of these dinosaurs, again, we can, talk about it by showing some stamps or illustrating it through stamps. We can also show the stamps of certain bizarre dinosaurs, and these are really bizarre. For instance, the first one that you were seeing, the stamp issued by Cameroon in 2016, that is of Amargasaurus. Amargasaurus, again, is one of those sauropodomorph dinosaurs, but as you can see, it is very bizarre. It's got these spines on its back, on its neck, and then it's got another sail-like structure on its back. These are nothing but extensions of the vertebral processes. So on the backbone has got these prominent processes on the top called the neural spine. So these are basically extra bony structures which are attached to the neural spine, which kind of extend all the way back. Then we've got in the middle Carnotaurus. Carnotaurus may be well known to most people, but again, one thing that we don't seem to realize is that T-Rex is normally ridiculed for having very tiny arms. But what about something like Carnotaurus, which had even tinier arms relative to its body proportion when you compare it with a T-Rex? Not to mention, it also had these weird spikes on the top of its skull. Then we've got something like Microraptor. Now, Microraptor, as you can see, it is truly bizarre. Not only has it got wings, it has on its forelimbs, it's also got an airfoil-like wing membrane full of feathers on the hind limbs, and it's got a tufted tail as well. So these are some of the bizarre dinosaurs. These are some of the weird, not so common dinosaurs that we can illustrate through stamps. We can also talk about dinosaur diet, like what did dinosaurs eat? So we can talk about the different stuff, like, for example, the herbivores or the plant eaters would have eaten something like ferns and cycads and horsetails and club mosses. And we also have stamps for some of them. We've got stamps issued by USA on the Goldie's wood fern. Then we've got Kew Gardens, which has issued the stamp for cycads. And we've also, of course, got the carnivores, which ate other dinosaurs. We've already seen a lot of other dinosaur stamps. Dinosaurs also ate other small mammals that were present at that time. They also preyed upon other reptiles and amphibians which were present. And you can see on the screen all those things illustrated through stamps. For instance, Polska actually issued the stamp of this Ichthyostega, which was one of those amphibians, the earliest tetrapod ancestors that we have for the transition from water onto land. But this stamp requires a little bit of updating. It requires some sort of updating in terms of the information, because it's written as if this is Ichthyostega, but the animal that has been portrayed on the stamp is not really Ichthyostega. Ichthyostega was very much fish-like in its overall form. The animal that is represented on the stamp is actually a temnospondyle amphibian, those groups of amphibians which were pretty much alive during the time of the dinosaurs as well. Ichthyostega, on the other hand, was way earlier back in time. It was when our ancestors actually moved from water onto land. So this is a case of kind of like an error on the stamps. This is a temnospondyle amphibian. Then we can also talk about some question which is as basic as who was the deadliest? If these dinosaurs were to fight, who would win? Now we would think, oh, that is a very childish and a kiddish question, but scientifically speaking, we can answer it. For instance, stamps can be used to illustrate this. On one side, on the far right-hand side, you've got the T-Rex. In the middle, you've got Giganotosaurus, which is slightly bigger than T-Rex. And then you've got Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is the biggest carnivorous dinosaur to have ever lived. And for those of you who have seen Jurassic Park 3, you will remember there is one particular scene in the movie wherein the Spinosaurus actually snaps the neck of T-Rex and kills it. Science has shown that this is not really possible. This is absolutely impossible because the bite force of a dinosaur like Spinosaurus, we know it through biomechanical studies to be somewhere around 20,000 newtons. Newtons is the unit we use for measuring the bite force. Newtons, of course, being named after Sir Isaac Newton. On the other hand, compare the 20,000 bite force of a Spinosaurus with 60,000 bite force of a Tyrannosaurus, and you can easily see that there is no way, even if Spinosaurus was bigger than T-Rex, there's no way that in a deadly combat, Spinosaurus would have had an upper hand by any means whatsoever. As far as the bite force of Giganotosaurus goes, we know it is somewhere in between. It is kind of like 35,000 newtons, more than Spinosaurus, but less than T-Rex. So if these three dinosaurs, let's just say, were to fight, the smallest of them, that is T-Rex, would probably win simply because of its sheer bite force. And we have already seen through stamps earlier that T-Rex was probably a bone cruncher, a bone crusher. And of course, during this time, during the Mesozoic era, dinosaurs were not the only animals to live. We also had in the skies pterosaurs and all their other extinct relatives. You had different kinds of pterosaurs, for instance, the tailed and the non-tailed ones, the anhangwerids and rhamphoringids, etc. And there are countries that have issued stamps as well, for instance. And in the water, you had many other sea creatures that were alive. You had the amphibians, you had the plesiosaurs, the fish-like ichthyosaurs, ammonoids, etc., etc. And the bottom right-hand side stamp that you are seeing, that is actually a Mosasaurus. Now, Mosasaurus, again, is very famous through Jurassic Park movies, Jurassic World movies. Mosasaurus is commonly seen as a dinosaur, a water-living dinosaur, but it was not. If next time you see a lizard in your home, just remember the Mosasaurus was more closely related to that lizard than it was to the dinosaurs or any other animal of its time, because Mosasaurs actually fall in the category of lizards called the Lepidosaurs, which includes lizards, snakes, and also modern-day tuateras of New Zealand. So Mosasaurus was literally a water reptile, a water lizard, technically speaking. So yes, a lot of stamps have been issued over the years by many countries on the dinosaur pals or dinosaur friends as well, the other animals that lived. And of course, all good things must come to an end. So at the end of the Cretaceous, that is 66 million years ago, it was not just the dinosaurs that died out. You also had the death of all the other stuff, or all the other the dinosaur friends that we just saw, the ammonoids, the plesiosaurs, the ichthyosaurs, and all the flying pterosaurs. Everybody came to like everybody's reign came to an end. And you have stamps again issued by various countries. As you can see, this particular one, it was issued by the Republic of Djibouti, and this is of Quetzalcoatlus, which is one of the biggest flying reptiles that we have. If you are to compare the wingspan of a Quetzalcoatlus, you have to compare it with something like a small fighter plane. It was literally that big. And then what are the different theories for the extinction of dinosaurs? Over the years, many theories have been proposed, but two of them which do hold a lot of weight today, again, we can illustrate it through stamps. One is, of course, the theory of the meteorite, wherein people have actually found the crater in the Chicxulub region of Mexico, a meteorite that struck the earth near Mexico 66 million years ago. And the photograph that you are seeing of the person over there, that is Luis Alvarez. Now, Vartak sir may have already shown you stamps of Luis Alvarez in his talk, but Luis Alvarez was a physicist. His son was Walter Alvarez, a geologist. Father and son physicist and geologist together discovered the so-called iridium layer, or the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Tertiary. They found that this iridium layer that separates the Cretaceous from the Tertiary has got an excessive amount of iridium, the kind of iridium you don't really find in the Earth's surface, the amount that is usually found in extraterrestrial bodies like asteroids. And shortly after their paper was published, people did actually do geophysical studies and found the impact crater. It is buried inside at the moment, but they were able to map it out. So we have stamps that have been issued which depict the extinctions of the dinosaurs, the non-avian dinosaurs, and also talk about the meteorites themselves. And on the far right-hand side, we do have the stamp for the other theory that prevails. That is, right about this time, there were different volcanic eruptions taking place as well. Of course, we are all aware of the Deccan Traps volcanic basalts that erupted roughly about the same time, 66 million years ago. Unfortunately, we don't really have a proper stamp for the Deccan Traps, although it would be amazing to have one. But yes, we can still talk about the different extinction theories through stamps. And now that we have talked about the evolution of dinosaurs, we've talked about their origins, we've talked about what kind of dinosaurs were there and their extinction, just a few final slides on what extra information can we get on dinosaurs from the stamps. For instance, the different styles of preservation, the different kinds of preservation, we can come to know from the stamps. So firstly, the type of fossils, whether it's a body fossil or some sort of like hard part preserved fossil, like you can see the skeleton on your left-hand side of Giganotosaurus. This was actually issued by Argentina. And we can also talk about the ichnofossils, or the trace fossils, like that issued by Brazil, wherein you are seeing the footprints of these dinosaurs. And we are not 101% sure to which dinosaur this particular footprint belongs, and therefore the stamp has shown all the three possible contenders. So this is also a very scientifically accurate stamp. It shows you what we know and what we do not know, because when you look at the stamp, what we know is that, okay, this is a dinosaur footprint. What we do not know is that which of these animals made the footprint. So again, the science and paleo artistry has gone hand in hand. And finally, Australia issued one of its stamps on the opalized theropod tooth. I'm sure this was also a stamp that was shown by Dr. Vartak in his slide, but this is just to kind of show you the different styles of preservation of fossils that we have that stamps can help us in illustrating. And we can also infer about the biology of dinosaurs through stamps. For example, stamps have been issued that actually display a combat, a fight between Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus. Now, some people might say, oh, okay, this is just speculation. But again, this is kind of based on science, because we do have certain ceratopsian horn marks, which have been inferred on thigh or shank bones of dinosaurs such as T-Rexes. So we do know that in all likelihood, this combat really did take place, and that is what is depicted on the stamp. On the next stamp, which is issued by Portugal on the sauropods and the long-necked dinosaurs, you can actually see a behavior that is preserved over here. In this case, the behavior is that of herding, that some of these long-necked dinosaurs probably moved in herds, as we have inferred from their trackways and footprints. So that is also something that stamps help us in illustrating. And like I said, paleoartistry and science need to go side by side. So over the years, we've got a lot of stamps that have been updated, that have been outdated, etc. These are just two examples that I've taken. So earlier we used to kind of hypothesize that probably sauropods were so huge that they could not walk on land. They had to have walked on water, walked inside water. But then afterwards, when they discovered that they had air sacs in their bones and that their initial body weights were kind of overestimated, people realized that, nah, they can pretty much walk on land. And so it was updated. Same with Triceratops. As you can see earlier, it is shown in this weird lizard-like posture. But today we know that Triceratops probably, in all likelihood, for most of its life, would keep its legs under its body and was able to run really fast and not like a sluggish, slow-moving lizard. So again, the stamps have been kind of updated over the years, and different countries have issued that. And dinosaurs have been depicted in cartoons and pop culture as well. The first stamp that you are seeing is of the Lost World. And this is not the Jurassic Park Lost World. This is actually to pay a tribute to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was actually the author of the Sherlock Holmes books. He was one of the first people to write an adventure story on dinosaurs, about a secluded island where there were dinosaurs, and adventurers would go there, discover that, and all sorts of trouble would ensue. So his book was called The Lost World, which was written in 1912. This stamp was actually issued to pay a tribute to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And of course, USA issued a stamp for Jurassic Park as well, with its famous iconic Tyrannosaurus Rex. And this is the final slide, and this is the sad but true you can say reality, that in India, we've got amazing dinosaur localities. We've got amazing dinosaur fossils. As you can see, the diversity of dinosaurs known from India is indeed high, but we don't really have any dinosaur stamps that have been issued by the Indian government. And yeah, hoping that would change in future someday. And thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to request people, if they have any questions, please ask the questions.
Excellent, very informative lectures. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes, it is indeed very interesting presentation, and I like your choice of stamp. I think that you choose actually very beautiful stamps to show us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Michael.
I drop you just a message, so if you like, I can share your presentation on my website. I have area for the philatelic actually exhibits as well as presentation. So in your chat you have my email and contact.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely, sir. I would like to be in contact with you. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, I have to leave now. I have another call.
Okay,
so,
no worries. Thank you very much.
So let's
Thank you
keep
for
in
it.
touch.
So it seems you had such a nice lecture. People are short of questions. We'll wait for a minute for people to ask questions, then we'll proceed further. Thank you.
Sure, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat box. It's by Mr. Sathak. He said
Yep.
the first dinosaurs that appeared in Triassic period were herbivores or carnivores?
That's a very good question, Sarthak. So from what we know today, we believe that dinosaurs evolved, at least based on the fossil evidence, we are of the opinion that dinosaurs evolved from bipedal, carnivorous to omnivorous ancestors. So the one particular stamp that I showed you of Lagosuchus that I said is kind of like distantly related to your dinosaurs. So Lagosuchus, in the stamp, it was shown it was trying to chase an insect like a dragonfly or something. So we know that in all likelihood, they were small bipedal omnivorous to carnivorous animals. So in that case, all the herbivorous dinosaurs that we have, it means that herbivory was something that was derived much later on in terms of evolution. So the ancestral condition was kind of omnivory to carnivory, and that herbivory was derived much later in the ornithischian dinosaurs, and a few theropods as well, because we have a few omnivorous to herbivorous theropods as well, like therizinosaurs and ornithomimosaurs and all those dinosaurs. So I would say it was carnivory and omnivory that was dominant in the ancestors.
Vikram, what about footprints of dinosaurs? What they tell us?
That's a very good question, sir. The footprints, so we did see one of the stamps that showed you the footprints from the Brazilian trackways. So footprints can tell us a lot about the speeds of dinosaurs. However, we should always be careful in what kind of information we are extracting from the footprints. Footprints can tell you about what the speed of the animal was when it made that footprint. But normally people tend to assume that, okay, if footprint is showing that this dinosaur walked at, let's say, 40 kilometers per hour, it means that that was the maximum speed of the dinosaur. That is not the case, because footprints were made in muddy environments. In a muddy environment, it is impossible for you to give your fastest speed. It will be like a slow drag or a walk. So yes, footprints can be used to calculate how fast or how slow particular dinosaurs walked, but that should not be kind of stretched to make it their maximum or the slowest speed. So it gives us information, but we have to be careful in how we interpret it.
Very nice, sir.
Thank you.
It seems we have cleared all the questions.
We
No,
do have
we
one
have
question.
a question by Krishna, sir. He says, how do scientists determine the size and weight of dinosaurs based on their fossils?
That's again a very good question, and this is where the advancements in technology have helped us. So earlier, what used to happen was we used to just take a particular bone of a dinosaur, compare it with, let's say we are taking a dinosaur thigh bone. We compare it with something like a lion thigh bone, because both are predators. For instance, a T-Rex and a lion. That way, because we don't really have any modern analogs for T-Rex, and then we would scale up the kind of bone or scale down the bone and determine the overall mass or weight of the animal. So in scaling up or scaling down, the problem is you tend to overestimate or underestimate the weights very easily. But then came these sophisticated studies wherein you actually look at the muscle scars on bones, wherein you actually have information on how much muscle mass was probably present on the dinosaurs, etc., etc. You include all these information into your data matrix on computers. There are softwares to do it, and they kind of give you these different kinds of possible models in terms of what could have been the probable weight or mass of a particular dinosaur. So that's a whole different branch of locomotor dynamics within dinosaur paleontology. And as a result of these computer models and these sophisticated models that have been improving with every single decade, I should say, or every single few years, we have got much better estimates of what dinosaurs weighed and like what was their actual mass. So we are ever more closer to determining their true mass and weight.
Which is the country where you get maximum number of dinosaur fossils?
So over the years, sir, the tables have turned, I would say, because earlier it was Northern Hemisphere, so countries like Europe, North America in general would have some of the best and the most abundant fossils. But over the last few years, especially the last few, at least the last decade or so, fossils from China's Liaoning province, especially the so-called Cretaceous-aged Jehol beds, they are producing an enormous number of these so-called dino birds. We have got so many fossils of these transitional links between dinosaurs and birds that at times we are really, it's very difficult for us to kind of draw the line between what is a dinosaur and what is a bird, because we've got exceptionally preserved dinosaur fossils from China, and like in abundance. We've got like feathers which are preserved. We can actually look at thin sections of those feathers and find out pigmented cells which are fossilized called melanosomes that can be used to infer the color of dinosaurs. So it's like what was once just a speculation is now a scientific reality. We can, with certain authority, talk about the colors of dinosaurs and say that, look, this is an accurate color of a dinosaur like Sinosauropteryx or Anchiornis huxley and so on.
Excuse me. You said in the last slide, India has a great history of variety of dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know in which areas the fossils were discovered or found, and the record was stored in the Survey of India. Anywhere.
So you want to know like which are the fossil localities? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. they
Yeah,
can-
okay. So most of the Indian fossils that we have come from Gujarat area, so like Balasinore and all those regions, and then we have some in Jabalpur and most of central India. So western part of India, central India basically, and a few from South Indian localities as well. But with regards to the South Indian localities, it's still like some people are not sure whether they're actually like proper dinosaurs or whether they must have been some sort of other reptiles, because some bones are fragmentary, some are relatively complete, but we do have a good record over there as well. So, but mostly it's like Gujarat and central India, I would say.
Okay.
So western and central India.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I can remember correctly, I think in Jabalpur we also have the so-called nesting grounds of dinosaurs. So we've got beautifully preserved dinosaur nests as well. Because when I was actually doing my geology back in Ferguson College, at that time the late Sarkar sir had mentioned about Jabalpur as a potentially rich site for dinosaur egg fossils, and I remember that very well, that he had mentioned.
Okay. Thank you. It was
Yeah,
a
no
nice
worries.
lecture. Very much informative, illustrative. Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions coming up?
Okay.
So, no questions. Okay. First of all, thank you, Vikram sir, for showing us through stamps how knowledge about dinosaurs have changed over time. Your ability to bring these ancient creatures to life, sharing insights about their lives, and the incredible discoveries made is truly commendable. Moreover, I enjoyed particularly the Bone Wars with all its fascinating stories about rivalry and the scientific discovery. It added an extra layer of intrigue to the world of dinosaurs. Thank you. Your passion for the subject actually shines through every word that you spoke. So it was a joy to listen to your lecture. Very good work. And to all my participants, thank you for the enthusiasm and dedication to learning. Tomorrow, we have a lecture by Ms. Yogini on Ticket to Archaeology. I'd like to request all the participants to keep using the same link for all the sessions as we have been doing. All sessions can also be viewed on Mission Devda YouTube channel. Till then, thank you, everyone.
I think Vaishnavi, you can tell about that also. We have got the tomorrow after the lecture, we have got concluding remarks. And
Yes,
then
yes.
Time. So last day.
Yes. Tomorrow is the last day of this Earth Science Week. So we have concluding remarks by Mr. R. Shankar from Bengaluru. So that will be the concluding part.